I recently had an interview with Johanna Hunt. Maybe you guys have seen it posted on social media. And it was my first interview. So she was interviewing me. And it just came out and I started to listen to it. And I realized that I had a little bit of anxiety about what I was talking about. Pairing with that, I've been wanting to do an episode for you guys focused on the topic of marriage for a while now. Like it's kind of been building. Several things have been happening that have brought some specific points to light that I really wanted to discuss on the topic of marriage. Well, what ended up happening in the interview with Johanna is I started off talking about my childhood and the divorce of my parents. I think I was just kind of nervous that this was my first interview and I didn't really know where to begin. So I just started back in my childhood and I talked about how the divorce of my parents led me to an interest in the field of psychology. And I do think that it has. But I also mentioned that divorce for children comes with a certain degree of trauma. And I didn't really go into much about that in the interview. And I feel like I have to address that a little bit more because I'm feeling like maybe I implied something that I don't really mean. So I want to talk about that today. But overall, what I really want to talk about are my views on marriage. I'm Dr. Williams, and this is my podcast. I have 2 graduate degrees in psychology, am a licensed mental health counselor, and an expert in the area of spirituality. I am devoted to living my best life and am sharing it with all of you. I'm bringing my expertise, education, and life experiences to you through this podcast. Everyone deserves to enjoy life, and that is what I'm here to talk about. Depression, anxiety, grief, you name it, we all go through it at one time or another. I believe there's a better way to come at these things than mainstream mental health care offers, and I'm here to offer you my perspective and dig into discovering how you can feel good no matter what life throws at you. It is my intention to contribute goodness to this world, and the content herein is how I do that. But one disclaimer before we dive in. Should you decide to apply the information offered here, be prepared for improvements in your life. You may even live happily ever after, and you'll only have yourself to thank. This is Feel Good Now, the Dr. Williams podcast. In the interview, when I mentioned that divorce for children comes with a certain degree of trauma, I think that that's true. I think that there is trauma associated with divorce for children, even though children are incredibly resilient and adaptable. But the thing I think that wasn't setting well with me in what I said in the interview was that it kind of implies that trauma is a negative thing, because usually, trauma is considered to be a negative thing. Well, I don't really feel that way. I know now that it was not a negative thing at all, and I can see it for what it really was. But in the interview process, I was just kind of thrown off. It's definitely different than recording an episode of the podcast. When I sit down to record for you guys, there's usually a lot of momentum going on a topic. I've been thinking about it for a while. I've been taking notes about it. And then I kind of do a journaling before I actually sit down to record to get clear about what it is I want to talk about, the points I want to make, and kind of just let it flow out on paper. Because in the interview with Johanna, I even mentioned that I've always been a talented writer, and I actually considered going into creative writing as a career path, because writing is something that has always come very naturally to me. I express myself well through writing, so it's part of my process in preparing an episode for you guys, for me to get clear about my thoughts and feelings on something. So when I was interviewing, it all just kind of came spilling out, And I don't think that I was able to clarify exactly what I mean about the experience. So my parents, my biological parents, got divorced when I was 4 years old, and they decided on joint custody of me. So we had a schedule set up where I would be with my mom or my dad on Monday, Tuesday. Then I would switch to the other parent for Wednesday, Thursday, and switch back to the other parent for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And we did that schedule for years and years and years. Holidays, we would swap. So one year I would be with one parent on Christmas Eve and the other one on Christmas Day. And the next year it would be the opposite. And that's kind of how we did things to make it as even as possible. So that came with some difficult things growing up. I remember many times I would wake up in my room, but I wouldn't know which room I was in. Like I wouldn't know which house I was at. And I'd have to kind of like get my bearings and go, okay, yeah, I'm at Dad's house today, or I'm at Mom's house, and get a feel for where I was. It was confusing and it was kind of unstable. You know, there wasn't a lot of consistency in that back and forth. So it did come with what we normally refer to as trauma, but it really kind of put me on this path of interest in the field of psychology. And I realize that now. What I went through in my childhood, those experiences, made me want to understand it more. And when I did take my first psychology course, I found an interest in it. Like it was very appealing to me. And I continued down that path and realized that I really wanted to understand why people do what they do and the whole understanding of that mental piece, what they think about and why. So I think that that experience in childhood led me down that path, which I am appreciative of. I'm thankful that that happened and led me to where I am now. I have no ill feelings about it whatsoever, but I'll get into that a little bit more toward the end of this episode. But what I really want to talk about right now is marriage. Now, I always knew that I wanted to be married. And I kind of mentioned to you guys before that I was a serial monogamist. I was in long-term relationships and then they would end and then I'd find myself in another long-term relationship. And that kind of happened all through my early adulthood. But I always did want to get married, but it took me some time to really feel like marrying this person was the right move for me. And that didn't come until my 30s when I got together with my now husband. So I was kind of picky. I was picky about making that commitment to somebody because for me, it was a really serious decision. And I kind of adhered to a lot of the social norms that come with the institution of marriage, meaning that it meant that you do it once. It's a life choice you make once to one person. It lasts forever with that one person. And the commitment that you make is binding and obligatory. And you're devoted to your promise to that person unconditionally. And that's actually what I told my now husband before we got married. I explained that that was what I thought marriage was, and that's what my intention was in my commitment to him, in marrying him. I was really strong about that belief. I remember even having a conversation with my husband and telling him that this was it. We were going to be together forever, that this marriage was a hard commitment, and that there was nothing he could do to make me not be married to him anymore. I even said, even if you committed adultery and betrayed me in that way, I'm going to stay with you. So he knew that going into this marriage with me. Of course, what I didn't say is that even though I would stay with him and stay married to him, that kind of betrayal would be unforgivable. I would punish him every day And we both would just have to endure this loveless marriage until we died. But the commitment was the important thing. That's what I told him. I told him, this is a commitment. We're doing this no matter what. No matter what we do to each other, we stay together. I think there was something appealing to him in that kind of devotion, in that kind of promise and commitment, because it offered him a feeling of security that he would always have me. I would never leave him, no matter what. And that was something he really wanted in marriage, to know that somebody was always going to be there. And what marrying him offered me was financial security and a lifestyle that I wanted. We both wanted kids, and I wanted to be able to raise my kids and stay at home with them. And he was on board with that. But both of those motives for getting married come from a fear of something. So a fear of being alone that makes you want somebody who's going to be there no matter what. And a fear of financial strain or being stuck in a career that you don't like and not having that lifestyle you want. My husband is one of the hardest working people I know. His work ethic is pristine. There is nobody that wouldn't benefit from hiring him. He is that ideal employee. He works, and it's part of who he is. And I knew that about him. And I knew that there was nothing I would have to fear when it came to security. He was going to provide for me and whatever family we created. There wasn't a doubt in my mind about that. And that was something that really made me feel good in marrying him. I think that a lot of people have those kind of motives that have an underlying fear associated with it, and they get married in order to satisfy that fear, in order to lessen it, in order to feel a little bit of relief from that fear that's there in the core of who they are. Anytime we're experiencing any kind of negative emotion, we definitely want to find something that relieves that. But I don't think a lot of people are thinking about that when they marry somebody. It's there for a lot of people, but they might not be aware of it or admitting to it. That's not to say that there isn't love there. There is, obviously. We find somebody who we love and then we marry them. But I'm just saying it's more complex than that. There's some underlying negativity that drives that legal binding commitment. Would you like to have an ad-free experience? I know you probably have my intro and my outro memorized by now, and maybe you just kind of want to cut out that ad space, this one right now that you're listening to, so that you can just get all of the content of the episode. Well, if that does sound like something that you're interested in, I've put together a Patreon account, and I'm offering all of the episodes I've recorded so far without that extra stuff, so you just get the content. And I'm also going to be offering members early access to the newly released episodes. So I'll be putting those on Patreon several days before the episode releases on all the other podcast platforms. So you'll be able to listen before everybody else. You'll also get access to the Dr. Williams Pod. It's a community where we're going to be able to interact and know each other on a more personal level. I'm going to be offering some Q&As so that we can really dive into some of these topics, and you can share your thoughts and I'll share my thoughts, and we can have a dialogue going. I think that we all could benefit from that. So that's something else I'm going to be offering. In addition, I'm going to be putting together a lot of exclusive content, things that I'm working on, creative projects that I have that are only going to be available to those people who are members on Patreon. You can find the link to the Patreon in the show notes, and I'm also going to post on social media, so you should be able to find it on all of my pages there as well. I look forward to getting to know all of you guys better and engaging in some co-creating together. For now, I'll just get back to the episode. See you on Patreon. I've been thinking about this actually a lot more lately because of some reality TV shows that I've been watching. I'm really attracted to reality TV that has to do with marriage. So I've watched Married at First Sight, Love is Blind, and more recently, The Ultimatum. Now, if you guys are familiar with any of those shows, you know that it's kind of this unorthodox way of meeting someone or getting married to someone. Let's just look at Married at First Sight. Now, this is a show where two people are married at the exact time that they meet each other. They don't know each other at all before the point that they are at the altar marrying one another. It's that arranged marriage kind of situation. But what is driving them to do that? It's their desire to be married to somebody. It's not their desire to be with that person because they don't even know that person. Their desire to have that connection with somebody in a legal way, because that's what it is. That's the whole point of that show. It stresses that this is a legal binding marriage. That is what is desirable. And for whatever reason, I'm not saying that they're not wanting to be married because they want to share their life with somebody and they want to love somebody. I believe those things are there too. But it's the legal binding obligation part that I think has a basis in fear for those people. They're wanting some sense of relief for some kind of fear or negative emotion that's present. The show Love is Blind is a little better because what ends up happening in that show is so many men and so many women come together to date each other in these things that they call pods, and they don't actually see each other. They talk through a wall and get to know each other. Once they've narrowed down who they like the most, they propose marriage, and then they meet each other, and then they spend the next 2 weeks living together and then meeting at the altar, at which point they either say, I do or I do not, in marrying the other person. It's a unique concept to fall in love with somebody without knowing what they look like, to take out that physical attraction element. I've watched several seasons of it, at least 2, and I would say that probably 50% get married and 50% don't. But if I was to err on the side of one or the other, I would say that more people do not get married than do. So that just goes to show that it's still not enough for them to take that legal step because they are not trusting the other person. They don't know the other person. They've only known each other for a few weeks, right? It's not about the person. It's just about that legal contract. Now, the Ultimatum show was a little bit more out there for me. When I started watching that, I thought, wow, I can't believe they're doing a show like this. Because what happens is couples come into the show, and in the couple, one of them wants to be married and the other one is unsure about it. They come into this controlled environment where now they separate as a couple and they date all the other people who came there with their significant others. And then they have to decide if they want to stay with the person they came with or if they want to be with the person they just met. This, again, they're coming into this situation. There's something there that's keeping them from making that legal commitment. And somebody's trying to push for it, and somebody else is trying to hold back from it. And it's just this way of forcing something to happen. It does not feel romantic to me at all. On the Love is Blind show, when people are getting ready to walk down the aisle, their parents are there usually, and they're giving them some kind of parenting advice about marriage. And I started thinking, what would I say to my boys if I was standing there with them right now? And I realized that what I would say is drastically different than what I would have said to them at the time that I got married. When I got married, I would have said something like, be sure that this is what you want. You only do this one time, and that's it. You are committed to this person. You are spending your life with them. This is it. But now, I wouldn't say anything like that. I wouldn't encourage marriage as a commitment at all. I don't think that that's what it's really about. I don't have that sense of commitment toward my husband anymore. Now, you may see that as me going back on my vows, and I suppose it is, because the promises I made to him before and at the time that we got married are different than I feel now. But that's not to say that I don't love and adore him any less. To the contrary, I have more love and adoration for my husband than I ever have. Our marriage is better than it has ever been. But my views on it are drastically different than when I made the commitment to him. The reason is that I wanted our marriage to be more romantic. That obligation to stay with someone no matter what, it kills the romance for me. For me, it's more romantic, it's more aligned that we choose each other every day because it's what we really want. There's no one else we would choose to be in that position in our life today. And we continually do that day after day. My husband is choosing me over everyone else in the world today and has every day since we got married. And I'm doing the same for him. I choose him today. I want no one else but him. Isn't that more romantic than staying with somebody because you said you would? I'm with him because I want to be. Nothing makes me happier. Honestly, no matter what we're doing or who's around us, he and I, we are my favorite couple. It literally fills my heart right now, sitting here with this truth and speaking it to you, because it's how I really feel. I love him so much, and I love our love. It's my favorite. It's fulfilling and completely satisfying to me. That's the kind of advice that I would give my sons. I would say, don't get all wrapped up in this commitment. There's no pressure, okay? You're being with this person because you love them and they love you. And every day you will have a choice to continue doing that. If at any time that changes and you or the other person is not happy or satisfied in this union, you have to follow your bliss and you have to allow other people to follow theirs. Choosing love is what matters, not obligation. You know how people admire couples who've been married for like 50 or 60 years, and they say things like, wow, such an accomplishment. I don't want that. I don't want an accomplishment. That to me implies trying really hard at something and then reaching the goal. It implies staying together through thick and thin because you said you would. And I'm not saying there's not merit in that. There is. There's even romance in it. There's something romantic about saying, no matter what comes our way, I've got your back. But you can still do that and not be in a legal binding marriage with somebody. And really, that's what I would encourage. That love you have for that person as you're making this promise to them. It's the love you have that you have to remember, not the vow. So what I want is beauty. I want choosing each other every day because it feels good, because nothing else feels better. There's no pressure, there's no commitment to be together. There's just pure loving choice out of a desire to be with one another. So that's what marriage is to me now. Honestly, if life happens and my husband wants something other than me at any point, I really, truly want him to have what makes him happy. I really do. Holding someone to me in opposition to their desire denies me the purity of love that I desire. The kind of love that I want is a love of choice. It's a love of preference, that you prefer me over everybody else. And if that changes, I'm not going to settle. I'm going to bless you in following your path and looking for your happiness. But I've got to have mine too, and nothing else will do for me. It has to be a romantic choice. You choose me, and I'm choosing you, and we're both happy about it. To me, divorce is just a type of legal rectification to a legal obligation. because marriage is a legal binding contract. Divorce lets you out of that contract. It's not a badge of dishonor. It's just paperwork. But happiness and thriving in life is the reason we all are here. And if a union to another person is interrupting that, you're doing no one any good by continuing it. The divorce that I've experienced in my life has been a blessing in so many ways. So many ways. I got undivided attention from both of my parents during my childhood and some seriously strong bonds that can't be broken. I have 4 parents, 4, who love and appreciate me. I got a baby sister who I was blessed to raise with my mom and my stepdad, and she and I are close, and I love her. Oh, seriously makes me cry just thinking about how much I truly love her. I also got a sister close to my age through the marriage between my dad and my stepmom, and she is such an amazing woman and a wonderful example of a devoted mother. I appreciate her so much. And in that, I got a niece and 2 nephews. Divorce gave me my husband and my 2 beautiful boys. The trauma that I referred to in the interview, I now know is just the blessing of contrast, which helped me get clear about what I really wanted in my own marriage now. I am so appreciative of the divorces in my life, and I wouldn't change it for the whole world.
That concludes this episode, but if you don't want to wait for the next episode to come out, I have more for you at drwilliamspodcast.com. You can learn more about me and my journey to podcasting, find all the ways to connect with me on social media, and there's a button to subscribe so you're the first to know what's new and upcoming. You also can shoot me an email at hello@drwilliamspodcast.com. You are so special to me, and your support does not go unnoticed. I want to support you too. This podcast is my outlet for growth because when you teach something, you hold yourself accountable and apply the information in life. But the inspiration for these episodes comes in a variety of ways, and one of those is through you. I want you to feel like this is your show too. So send me a message and let me know which episode is your favorite and why. And tell me if there's a topic you'd want to hear me talk about. Your feedback applies to so many people, and your suggestion could change someone's life for the better. The best way to do this is by subscribing to the show and leaving a review through your favorite podcast platform. I really listen to you guys, and this dialogue feeds my soul. You say that you're a fan of me, but truth be told, I am a fan of yours. Everything is working out for each of us, and we're all in this together.